Hello. I'm going to make a short summary of what I've been up to lately in these talks. Okay, so in my 8th video I talked about how the Norse pagans, as was the case with many pagan cultures, believed in a universe that was ruled by multiple forces, powers that be, and that they did not divide these powers into good or evil, but rather related to all of them in a pragmatic manner. All the powers in the universe were divided into various tribes, and perhaps surprisingly, these cosmic tribes were usually also only of one gender. That is, you had the female tribes and male tribes. I'm going to talk about all of them, but since I'm continuing the goddess theme here, I will focus on the female tribes first. Among the female tribes, the female superpowers are counted 1. The so-called Giantesses, the Gygur. They are the oldest creatures in the whole cosmos, considered the mothers of everyone else, including the universe we live in. Throughout the Edda, the Giantesses are described as creative, primeval powers. They gave birth to the universe. They shaped the earth. They dug out the valleys. They built the mountains, that kind of stuff. In our dimension, they are physically manifest as waves and rivers and light. 9 giantess sisters gave birth together to the present universe, and these giantesses are also identified as the 9 previous worlds, and the 9 mothers were the daughters of Ran, the oldest among giantesses, who is manifest in our dimension as the ocean. The ocean is also known as the cosmic ocean from which the world tree was born. Giantesses are also perceived as sorceresses. Indeed, a giantess is always portrayed as the prototypical witch. In the sagas, the idea of a witch and a giantess is always mixed up. Mind you, people didn't think that witches were evil in those days. They thought they were wise women and honored them as such. Then, second, the Nornir, English, Norns. They are closely related to the giantesses, probably identical, but as Norns they specialize in fate, so we may just call them fates. They are all descended from the oldest Norn called Urdur, which means origin. She owns the cosmic ocean that goes by the name of Urdarbrunner, which means the well of origin. Snorri relates how all the other Norns, that is, all the other fates, ascended from the well of origin. This well is described by Snorri as sacred water that has the power to transform and renew everything. It is the well that nurtures the world tree, and Urdur, origin, the oldest among the fates, waters the tree every day. The Norns carved the runes of destiny into the world tree and decide the laws and the destiny of the universe, of men and gods alike. No one are more powerful than these ladies. Now, more about Norns. You see, countless Norns ascend out of the well of origin every day. And they do that because they are called to every birth that ever happens, and that's not because they are into fertility cults. It is because each person, each individual, is assigned a personal fate goddess at birth, and she will follow him or her through life, shaping our fates as we go. 3. Fylgjur, so-called followers. They were female guardian spirits that followed human beings throughout their lives. They are probably identical to the individual Norns that Snorri described as following people through their lives. 4. Hamingjur. A hamingjur means a shape-walker and is the aspect of the human soul that may walk around without its body attached. We all have one. That is, if you have an out-of-body experience or the power to let your soul move in the shape of an animal, it is the hamingjur who performs this action. And there is a little confusion about what the difference is between a fylgja and a hamingjur. They seem to overlap, you see. Basically, the follower and the individual fate goddess and the out-of-body shape-walker are all expressions of the human soul. The soul, you will notice, is essentially female, and the Norse word for soul, sal, is indeed a feminine noun. Now, do you find it odd? We often think that the spiritual is a masculine sphere, but that is cultural. The Scandinavian religion was not entirely Indo-European. It was strongly influenced by another and older spiritual tradition brought into Scandinavia during the last ice age by the ancestors of the Sami, a Finno-Ugric people who were the first to inhabit the Scandinavian peninsula. They believed that all souls were generated by the great sun maiden, the Edda, and that all souls were female until they were changed within the mother's womb. This idea was typical of Finno-Ugric peoples from Scandinavia to eastern Siberia. The idea of the sun as the mother of all souls was probably also a part of the Norse religion. During the Bronze Age, the sun was the most central deity. Sun was a feminine noun and perceived as a goddess in the Old Norse religion. She was called Alfredur, the shine or the wheel of elves, and elves are in Norse poetry metaphors for human souls. Alright, I mentioned all the female superpowers now except the Valkyrie and the goddesses. The Valkyrie are just like the Fates. They are the kind of fate that belong to warriors. In the Poetic Edda, there are many stories about heroes who through rituals of initiation manage to wake up their own personal Valkyria, and she will follow him in battle, protect him and guide him throughout his lifetimes, and finally take him to Valhalla and save him from oblivion in hell. It is necessary to wake up your fate, because it is said both by Snorri and in the Poetic Edda that most fates are sleepwalking. Goddesses, finally. Actually, there is no word for god or goddess in the Old Norse language. They had maktar, the powers. And among the powers were the Æsir, who were powers that seemed to represent human, mental and emotional capacities, such as thought, intent, poetry, ecstasy, spirit, rage, passion, wisdom and so forth. Their wives are called the Åsynjur, and Æsir and Åsynjur are usually translated as gods and goddesses. Essentially, the goddesses are giantesses or fates who are married to the gods. They actually seem to become Åsynjur goddesses through their marriage to Æsir. If you realize that the female superpowers always, without exception, represent creative power, soul and fate, you will also realize that the goddesses represent the creative power, soul and fate of the gods they are married to. In my 9th video, I talked about the great goddess and how all the female superpowers in the Norse pagan universe, no matter how they were otherwise classified, were worshipped together as a collective, the Disir, and they were unified by the great singular Dis, the lady, Freyja. Now, to clarify what I mean, the concept of the great goddess is a pantheist concept. I mentioned this concept for the first time in my 3rd video, I believe. Pantheism is something between monotheism, the belief in and worship of only one god, and polytheism, the belief in and worship of many gods. The pantheist thought is that all the gods and goddesses are real on one level, but ultimately aspects or expressions, avatars or hypostases of one unifying supreme being. This supreme being is usually identified as one particular deity who was supposed to be the true face behind all the others. This did not mean that the other gods were not worshipped or perceived as real. They were, but there was a knowing that you were really just worshipping a particular expression of a greater whole. Pantheism is a much stronger element in pagan and polytheist religion than is commonly known, it seems. We know for sure that pantheism is a very strong trait of the Hindu religion. Most Indians today perceive all gods and goddesses as being on one level real individual deities, but on an ultimate level they are but different expressions of the Great One, and that Great One is usually identified as a particular god or goddess among the pantheon. There are 3 main candidates for the supreme being in India as far as I know: Shiva, Vishnu and Mahadevi, the great goddess. As far as I have understood Hindu religion, only the Mahadevi, the great goddess, is perceived as quite independent of a partner, since there is a very old perception in India that male gods need their Shakti, their feminine dynamic power, to act in the world at all. A male god will therefore always be accompanied by a female god, so that his will may actually be acted out in the world. Action, you see, and power is a female force. So, even if a male god is perceived as the boss, he is completely dependent on Shakti, the goddess. The patriarchal tradition dictates that Shakti needs to be controlled by the passive male aspect. On the other hand, there is also a strong and ancient matriarchal tradition that has survived in certain layers of Indian culture, and there are those who still believe that Mahadevi, the great goddess, is the supreme being, that Shakti, the power, is the boss behind everything. We also know that in classical times there were many very important so-called mystery cults, a religious element that was very strong in the classical age and may have been strong also in ancient Egypt, Bronze Age Crete, Anatolia and so forth. The mystery cults had a strong pantheist concept, and the oldest, biggest and most popular mystery cults believed that the great goddess was the supreme being. During the Roman Empire, the three main candidates for the position of supreme being were African Isis, European Demeter, and Asian Cybele. There is a lot of discussion about how far back you can date the concept of the pantheist great goddess behind these goddesses. Some, like me, believe that the concept reaches far back into the Ice Age and blossomed during the early Neolithic and just continued into the Bronze and Iron Ages as mystery cults. It is notable that the three main candidates for supreme being, Isis, Demeter and Cybele, are extremely ancient goddesses that evidently date back to prehistory. Others believe that the idea of the great goddess just popped up during the Hellenistic age and was a rather new and local event that the same people who believed this very much would rather not talk about at all. Now, summing up, the concept of the great goddess is a pantheist concept. Pantheism meaning that there is supposedly one unifying whole, a supreme being behind all other divine individual. This concept is often related to the concept of the all-soul, a universal soul that is sort of the ultimate supreme and unifying reality behind all other individual souls. That means that you and I seem to be different people, different individuals, and on some level of reality we definitely are. But on some other deeper level of reality we are all exactly the same. That is what the mystery of pantheism is about. Not only are the gods and goddesses ultimately but expressions of the Great One, we, as human beings, are also expressions of the Great One, the source of all souls. The great theme of ancient mystery cults was to unite your individual soul with the all-soul, and this divine union was often described in metaphors such as marriage, a marriage between the individual human soul and the great divine all-soul. So, how does all this pertain to Norse paganism? As already said, there is quite enough evidence that there was a pantheist concept of the great goddess encompassing all female expressions of the divine, and as I have also mentioned, the female superpowers also seem to be closely related to the soul. And I'm not only talking about the human soul here, I'm talking about the soul of the universe, the soul of every living entity in the cosmos. The great goddess is the soul, the fate, the creation of the world tree, and just as all entities in the universe are microscopic replicas of the world tree, we all possess a microscopic replica of the goddess within. Bye.